But then isn't this just your way of getting more money out of me?
Again, I'd much rather protect you on the front end and maybe send you a bill for, let's say an hour or two to edit that contract and fix it up than for you to call me up and say, yep, this is a total disaster. Let's file a lawsuit. Because then I have to have the conversation with you that's, hey, we can file a lawsuit. Are you prepared to spend the next year and a half in court and spend tens of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees?
Yeah, well, we've had that conversation, haven't we?
You said it, not me.
Fair enough.
I think it's pretty good. Unless I know where you are. I noticed that we were standing around now, bro.
You want a phone book?
Absolutely not.
I try to crouch down, but I don't know if I can.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
All right, then.
That'll be the opening comment. What is happening here?
Exactly. Oh, so we've all been there. A great lunch, a firm handshake, and a promise that we'll work out all the details later. Right? We're good to go. It's trust. I trust you. Feels like growth.
Oh, and as a lawyer, it feels like a disaster waiting to happen. But today we're going to talk about why being nice is probably costing your business.
Okay.
Maybe we should introduce ourselves first.
I'm Karen Sullivan, keeping your marketing scalable.
And I'm Maritza Shay Nelson, trying to keep you out of legal trouble.
Welcome to the Executive Floor. Pull up a chair. Bar is open. Maybe that's nice. What are we drinking today?
So today's drink of the day is brought to you by Old Forester. It's the 1870 original batch.
Oh, nice.
Good stuff, right?
Yes, it is. And you've got the craft ice in here to go with it. I love it.
I have to be careful because I'm going to run out of craft ice, but
that's okay. I got you, girl. Oh, yeah.
List of podcast equipment. Buy more craft ice cubes.
That's going to be a business expense? Oh, wait a minute. That's not a legal question.
We'll have to have an accountant on.
If you know any accountants, let us know. We're looking for guests. So, okay, let's be real. It's harder than ever to land a deal. I am not going to make it harder with buzzkill long contracts. Give me a break. What are you thinking?
As an attorney, I get to see when all the stuff goes wrong. I'm not trying to be a buzzkill. I'm just trying to save you from the drunk driving catastrophe later on down the road.
Wow. Didn't see that coming. Literally. I get it, but this is a day and age where we throw around words like trusted advisor and know, like, and trust. What's up with that? Where do we go with that?
I tell everybody, yes, you're going to do business with people that you know, like, and trust. And at the same time, I want to make sure that we are literally on the same page about this agreement. So have we really taken the time to make sure that we're on the same page, and what we've shook hands to after a few of these is what we all really meant?
Fair. All right. So walk me through how that happens. Because, some of my best deals are, yeah, I can do that.
So yes, and sometimes in those situations, I tell people we probably want to have that agreement that's already ready to go, that covers 90% of what you were going to cover anyway, in that, hey, this is something that I do. I can absolutely do that for you, and my contract's already ready to go. Maybe we need to do some minor tweaks here and there, but that shouldn't be a huge hindrance to the deal.
Well, that would make it easier to sell, knowing it's ready to go. And actually, that kind of implies that I do the same thing for everybody, which is not a bad thing.
Well, it also, I think, makes you look just a little bit more professional, right? And it's not I didn't know I was going to get this deal. Let me scramble and see if I can find a lawyer at the last minute to put something together for me.
Right. Well,
or show it with that trashy Rocket Lawyer document.
That makes a lot of sense. We're going we pointing fingers here, calling names. You're not gonna call me out, are you?
Client confidentiality. I'm not pointing out any names. I'm just saying I've seen some garbage documents.
Yeah, I've seen some garbage marketing too. So let me tell you that. Okay, fine, and I get it. I mean, let's face it. If you're trying to scale your business, and the deal all lives in the owner's head, I get it. You can't delegate a handshake. That makes sense. So if you've got a customizable process that hits the 90%, that makes a lot of sense. Then maybe I could trust my team members to make a sale on their own or to fulfill the sale.
Or just having a process in place that's like, hey, you got the deal done. Let me see that statement of work before you send it off, just to make sure that, yes, these are things we can actually do. And you have not overpromised the sun, moon, and stars to this hotshot client.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I see the contract actually kind of as an offshoot to some of the documentation that I use, because definitely we use a statement of work that we ask our clients to sign. And that has a twofold process, or a twofold benefit, actually. Not only does it clearly set expectations for the client, I have found that the more details I put in there, and there's details and then there's details. Let's say dates and specific deliverables, that sets the expectations for what they're going to receive. It also really, really clearly delineates for my team what they have to do. So rather than come back to me all the time, well, what do you want here? What are we doing? They've got a list that says this is what we promised. Go forth and deliver, and come see me if you've got a problem. That changes my dynamic a lot. So I can see, so how the contract can potentially, I'm stumbling a little bit here. I can see how that contract can potentially do that.
I mean, there's a huge difference between a deliverable that's like, hey, go build this client a website, and no, the website we've agreed to build is going to have X number of pages and Y number of videos. Or,
well, you bring up a good point there. How much detail is enough detail? Because website's a good example. There are layers and layers, not just number of pages, but how's it really going to operate? How's it going to react to Google? How's the back end functionality work? Do they have to come back to us to for every little change, or is this something I'm turning over? How do you deal with industry standards and expectations? Are there things in these contracts that go without saying that don't have to be specified?
I think a lot of that depends on the industry, right? I mean, is there really an industry standard for a new website? If there's something we could actually point to, right? By all means, fine. There's industry standards for what's legal malpractice, right?
Okay.
There's probably industry standards for an architect when they're designing a project. But if there aren't, if we're going to go back later and go, well, now we're fighting over what the industry standard was, that's the kind of thing I'm trying to avoid. No, your client might be thinking, all right, a new website. Oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to be able to sell 50 gazillion products and host 1 million videos, and they're going to maintain it for life. And you're thinking, whoa. I was thinking a landing page and a blog.
Yeah, and that's certainly happened. I had a client recently, a brand that we rolled out 15 years ago. They're still coming back. Do you have this version of that logo? Do you have that version of the logo? I'm like, what happened to what, in 15 years ago, it was still a disc we delivered. How does that play into the expectations? There is no industry standard for that. Once the deliverable is delivered, where does the responsibility end?
Well, and I think some of that kind of plays into, you're the marketing person. Like we talk a little bit about customer service, right? If your standard for customer service is, by all means, come back to us for this stuff 25 years later. Okay, fine. I don't have a problem with that being your standard.
Right.
I do a lot of my work on a flat fee basis. I don't have in my engagement agreement, oh, you only get 3 revisions and then I'm going to dump you or start charging you more money, because from a client service standpoint, that's not who I want to be.
Right.
So that's fine. I've seen other people where it's like, no, we will give you the website, you will tell us your edits, we will make one change, and then we are done. We only keep your documents for a year, and we expect you to make a copy of all your files and don't come back to us 15 months later demanding
Right.
copies of things you were supposed to save yourself. So some of that I think is just client service and what you want your business to be.
Now that makes a lot of sense. I think too, things have changed over the years and customer expectations have changed. People are dealing with, Canva, Google, essentially, and endless file storage.
Yeah, the
And-
cloud is now 15 million clouds.
Exactly. It's a whole thunderstorm, depending on who you talk to. But that does influence, customers clients typically use their own systems, use their own circumstances to determine what they should expect from their service providers. And that can influence, I may not know what their expectations are unless we wait. And frankly, even if you talk through it, I can see having it in writing would really help clarify things. It always gives you something to come back to.
Exactly. And that's the big thing, is just having that clarity so that, like I said, we can make sure we're literally all on the same page. And that way, if problems come up later on, we have something we can go back and look to and say, yeah, this is
That's
what we
right.
agreed to, not, oh, well, I remember us talking about you were going to do all this extra stuff for me. Right. And that's when the
Right.
scope starts to blow up on people, unfortunately.
So as a buyer, as a purchaser, should I be proactive in asking for a contract like that?
My opinion has always been that if you're dealing with a professional, they will have that contract ready to go. Now, they might have their pretty fee proposal, sitting in front of it, all their
Right.
fancy marketing materials, which is fine. But at the end of the day, there should be something where everybody signs on the dotted line. I often tell people, I want to know exactly who is supposed to be doing what, by when, and for how much.
Well, that's very valid, and I think that's the kind of thing that has turned marketing, actually marketers and lawyers, given us a bad reputation over time, because 50 years ago, when you could have done something with a handshake, because you know where your lawyer lives, but you might have had that level of trust. But certainly every client or prospect I meet with these days has a marketing or lawyer or both sob story. They've had a bad experience or more than one. And I question, what is the best way to avoid that?
And this is why I'm so big on writing this stuff down. I mean, I tell people there's 2 things that come to mind. One, when I first started my own practice, I would always ask people, hey, have you ever had a bad experience with a lawyer? Like, tell me about it so that I can make sure that my office doesn't do one of those things that might be a trigger for you.
Sure, that makes sense.
Unfortunately, all those stories were divorce attorneys, so I had to stop asking the question.
Yeah.
But the other thing that comes to mind is that this is why I think contracts have to be living, breathing documents. And I know this is going to sound like, oh, the attorney just wants more money. That's not what's happening. Sometimes there will inevitably be some customer or client situation that neither of us thought of.
Right.
And that's when we have to go back and say, hey, let's add that to the agreement, right? That just people are unforeseeable. They come up with stuff. This would be a good time to add something to the agreement. And this is why, to your point, contracts sometimes get a little bit longer than our clients would like.
Oh boy, do they ever.
Because that thing happened one time. And so the lawyer went, okay, let's stick that in the contract.
That is so true. But then isn't this just your way of getting more money out of me.
Again, I'd much rather protect you on the front end and maybe send you a bill for, let's say an hour or two to edit that contract and fix it up, than for you to call me up and say, yep, this is a total disaster. Let's file a lawsuit. Because then I have to have the conversation with you that's, hey, we can file a lawsuit. Are you prepared to spend the next year, year and a half in court and spend tens of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees?
Yeah, well, we've had that conversation, haven't we?
You said it, not me.
Fair enough.
I mean, what's the deal? Like, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
This is true. But you know as well as I do, all of this, it's a great idea. Great idea if this all works. In my mind, this comes with one huge caveat.
Okay, what's that?
See how I got the lawyer term in there? So, clients don't read.
No, they don't.
They don't read. So, how does this protect me?
It protects you because if worse comes to worse, the only thing the court cares about is what's in the four corners of that document.
Okay.
Contrary to popular belief, the court does not care at all. Oh, well, they told me this, and we had emails about that, and our text messages. No one cares. That's why literally every business contract says somewhere in that miscellaneous section,
Right.
This is the entire agreement between the parties. That's it. This is the whole thing.
All right.
So, but to that point, I've had situations where clients have said, hey, can we get a plain English version of this? Can you give me something that maybe we can just stick in our fee proposal or a couple of bullet points as we're going through this with our client, right? That could be a customer service touch point of like, hey, blame the lawyer. I will take that every time. Hey.
Oh, I do.
Lawyer said you got to read and sign this, 15, 20 page contract. But hey, I just want to point out the important points to you. Section 1 says this, and then section 2 is about this, and that, and hit those highlights and then say, hey, if you need some time to talk it over, think about it, I understand, but I just want to make sure that we all are on the same page about what we're doing.
Okay.
And maybe sometimes that doesn't happen in this day and age of, Dropbox or whatever, electronic signature platform.
Right.
But that can be a part of your customer or client onboarding, I think.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So let's back up and, what are the essential things to look for in a contract like this? The things that I need to make sure that my lawyer's putting in there, or that I should expect to look for, and which ones are standard and which ones do we customize?
Yeah. So, kind of going back to my earlier example, I always tell people who is supposed to do what, by when, for how much, when are we getting paid, right? Let's go back to by when for the payment as well, right?
Right.
And depending on what it is, especially in your marketing work, and I think we'll hit on this in a future episode, who's going to own what at the end of all of this?
Yeah, that's a big piece.
So those are kind of the big ones. And, I also think dispute resolution should be a really important piece that's in there because let's face it, things happen. And so having a plan for that'll hopefully keep us out of court and keep some of those costs down and, frankly, keep some of those attorney's fees down are really important.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll tell people like, hey, if for some reason you don't feel like this is, expensive enough or valuable enough to take to an attorney, here's my sort of like poor man's contract review, and it's not Chat GPT. It's hand the contract to one of your business friends. You've got somebody that's got business sense, right?
Sure.
Don't explain anything to them.
Okay.
Just hand it to them and say, hey, can you answer those basic questions? Who's supposed to do what, by when, and for how much?
All right.
And if they can do that, you've probably at least covered the important points. And if they're looking at it going, wait, I don't understand X, Y, and Z, there's a problem here.
Okay. That's fair.
But so often when I get contracts from people to look at, the issue is not so much kind of the standard service agreement type of thing. It's really in that statement of work.
So do we need the 10-page contract for every statement of work?
Depending on your business, sometimes I'll do the one, the 10-page contract and then tell you, okay, you can do your statement of work to just attach to it, right? Because here are the basic legal terms. They're not going to change 95% of the time. You know? you get paid, the logo probably belongs to the client, right? Like that's not going to change. In the event of a dispute, let's try to sit down and work it out like rational adults. And if that doesn't work, let's go to mediation. I expect you to pay me within 10 days of the invoice or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
Like those things aren't going to change. But then the contract can say, okay, hey, I'm going to do services for you as defined on the statement of work.
Yeah.
And then that's where you can spell out exactly what those deliverables are.
Okay.
The problem I see is people will do that and the deliverables will be real vague and wishy-washy, like we talked about, like build a website. Well, what does that mean?
Yes. Well, that's the same argument I have with clients who want their service proposition to be vague and wishy-washy. So it doesn't work. I get that. Fair enough. Okay. And we're going to cut this part out while I'm looking at my notes. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, the attorney fee. Yes, when I started my business over 30 years ago, I knew I had some legal fees I had to address. But we're talking about must have, nice to have, and comfortable.
Yeah,
And they're not always the same thing.
not at all.
So as a startup, if I'm how do I start that conversation as a startup? How do I start the conversation? Who do I look for in a budget I can
Work
with?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I won't sit here and pretend to talk for every attorney out there. I usually will tell people, what are your goals? What are you most worried about? And we can kind of build a legal plan around that.
Okay.
And then I'll tell people, here is the full kind of menu of things that you might need for this business in the next year.
Okay.
But you don't need to do it all at once. Like, let's focus on what's really important and what's going to impact your business the most. And then we can come back and hit some of this other stuff as time and budget and emotional capacity allows, right? I know you've got to save some budget for marketing as a startup.
Absolutely.
That basic service agreement that you're going to hand to every client or customer, that's probably really important. Setting up your LLC, I'm willing to bet you can probably do that yourself. Like filing with the Secretary of State is just not that hard, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We could have a conversation about trademarks and, we'll talk about that in a future episode, but is that something you really need on day one when you're still trying to figure out that service proposition and what colors your logo is going to be?
That's right. Yeah.
That may be a bit premature, right?
Definitely.
But if you're starting a restaurant and signing a lease agreement, yeah, I want to look at that before you sign it, because I promise you, unless you've done this before, you don't know what you're signing.
This is true.
And again, and I don't say that to be like mean to people, right? Like, yes, you're a business owner, that you're by definition smart, intelligent, driven. But the legalese and that stuff, I don't even like reading lease agreements. I know you glazed over it and didn't understand all 30 pages.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that underscores a couple of other issues that we will talk a lot about and hit on time and time again. You mentioned you have to know what your goals are. You're going to ask what my goals are for my business.
Right.
Well, guess what? That's a very similar conversation that your bookkeeper is going to have, your CPA, if you have one.
Yep.
Your marketing guru is going to ask you, what are your goals? What do you want out of this? So that's a really good place to start. And if you can't answer some of those basics, there's very little you are going to be successful at doing. So that's one of the things. The other thing is it doesn't all have to happen overnight. You can do some of these things in stages, but it does have to be the things that take care of business first.
I'm curious from a marketing standpoint, because we've talked a bit about sort of the legalese that goes into contracts, but how do you tell your clients? Like, do you help your clients out with like sort of the pitch and okay, now here's the contract. Like, where do we stick that into the sales process? Where's that part of the funnel?
So that is some of the things that we address in marketing from the C-suite. We will talk about the entire sales pipeline and process and where the barriers are, because a lot of times it's not so much a barrier for the client or the prospect. A lot of times it's a barrier for the owner or the newly delegated to employee. It can be a barrier for them to make a successful sale. So all of those things do factor into the marketing conversation. And yes, we do hit on those. And you do have to look at it that way. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
How do you, as the marketing guru, kind of, as the attorney, I've drafted up this contract and everybody says it's way too long, right? But how do you help clients work that into the sales conversation as a part of the sales process? Because I know you do more than just, here's a website and some social media posts.
We do. Marketing from the C-suite insists on working at the C-suite level with the owner or the VP of sales, whoever is making that initial contact, whoever's having that conversation. And so we dig into that and we sort of get inside their heads and ask how they're doing it, how they're finding these people. Of course, we're looking for ways we can help with that. But it does have to be a process. Something comes first, something comes second, something comes third. And you have to look at every individual industry. Some industries, it's absolutely typical to have a menu or a cafeteria plan here. You pick what you want off of this menu, and that's what we're going to charge you.
Right.
Other industries are much more bespoke. And you'll hear a lot about value-based pricing, which is a factor to consider, but you also have to cover your costs, and your costs tend to be measured a lot differently than value is measured. So it can be a really complicated conversation. We might need a whole series of podcasts
just on pricing.
Yeah. and the philosophy behind it and how you interact with it. So it's kind of it's not an easy answer on when to talk about the contract, but it is always a good idea to start the conversation with, we have a process, we have things that we always do the same versus the things that we do differently each time. It's never too early to start talking about those expectations and having those hard conversations. And in my sales process, I typically don't present the contract until I've got a verbal agreement and we've already talked about numbers, we've talked about expectations. So we've had those conversations, and it's not a surprise when they get the pages that my lawyer makes me send them.
But I mean, I'm the same way, right? Like, we have the consultation, we do the fee proposal, we talk through all those options, right? You've already seen the numbers. Yes. You've already said, yes, I want to do this. I'm going to put this project off for later. And then I say, okay, great. Now I can blend ethics rules. For ethics purposes, I'm going to send you this engagement agreement, right? And
Absolutely.
this, it'll come from Dropbox Sign, and this is how we'll handle payment, and this is how we'll get started, right? So I think it is important to break that or build that into the process. And that process will look different for every industry, because if you are, selling t-shirts via Shopify, right? Okay, well, it's just a terms and conditions checkbox that nobody ever reads, and that's the end of it, right? But if you're doing more custom marketing services, expect a little bit more of a conversation about what that looks like.
And we typically do have a very in-depth conversation with our clients about what the shape of their marketing funnel looks like, what it takes to get somebody down to the point of sale. And it's a very different shape for different businesses.
Absolutely.
So it's not a one size fits all, but again, that's a conversation for another day. So I think the important thing to remember is your secret weapon is clarity, whether it's in your legal or your marketing or whatever it is, or just in your verbal conversation. Your secret weapon is clarity, and it is a brand asset and should be treated as such.
Well, and I think for me, if I could throw in sort of the legal safety net, it really is, think about the contract as, break in case of emergency, worst case scenario, my lawyer's going to have something to work with.
Yeah.
I truly hope we never get to that point. There's a lot of stuff that's going to go into a contract. I mean, you and I had this experience just putting this podcast together. There's a lot of stuff that goes into a contract that it'd be malpractice if I don't put it in there. But I truly hope we never need it. Like,
Right.
we should never need to go read about indemnification and insurance and dispute resolution, right? But I gotta have that stuff there just in case. So it really, for me, it's that break in case of emergency.
Yeah.
That's my bottom line.
So do you have one for the road?
One for the road. I think, buy your lawyer a shot. Don't be afraid to ask those tough questions. But I think if I take anything away from this episode, it's, we all work together as a team, right?
Yes.
Your lawyer is not fighting your marketing person. Let's work together on what this looks like. If you want to stick it in your proposal, I am happy to help you do that. If your accountant tells you, hey, your pricing is all wrong, hey, let's go back to the drawing board and figure that out. But it can be a team effort.
That makes sense. No one person can do it all.
Exactly.
But here's the toast to boundaries.
To boundaries.
And to saying no to an undocumented client relationship.
I'll drink to that. Well, I really hope that everyone enjoyed this episode of Executive Poor. Trademark attorney in me is like, get the brand name right. I really hope everybody enjoyed this episode of Executive Poor. Make sure you hit all of those like, subscribe buttons. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcast from.
That sounded so good. and for transcripts and episode notes, go to executivepoorpodcast.com.
I think we nailed one. How you feel?